Hi, this is David Armstrong with another edition of our Musical Theater Factory vlog. And today my guest is one of the most frequent people on our stage over the last, number of years.
6.5 years.
6.5 years, Allen Fitzpatrick. And he's back again in rehearsal simultaneously for two shows over the next couple weeks, both Damn Yankees and Titanic. So I thought we'd talk about both shows with Allen today. Hi there.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
So 6.5 years was your first time a year ago was your first time on our stage?
I remember specifically coming out at the end of September of 2005 when you were still rehearsing at TPS Studios. Actually,
Was that Sweeney Todd?
Sweeney Todd. I came out actually for a week in September, and we rehearsed at the Children's Theater rehearsal studios.
I remember that, yeah, because we had...
And then I went back to do Tom Jones for Nymph or something, and then came back and joined the cast. Yeah.
And that was your first trip to Seattle?
I came to Seattle in '99 to do the national tour of Sunset Boulevard.
Oh, that's right.
And we stopped at Paramount for 2 weeks. I lived in Tower 801, but that was very fast. You know, a visit of, I think we did 32 cities on that tour over a year and a half. So I remember Seattle being a fantastic stop along the way. Yeah. But, I didn't know I would ever come back here. And then I heard around 2005 that you had taken over here at the Fifth Avenue for a while. And when you invited me to do Sweeney Todd, it was great. And I came here and, the rest was history.
So you fell in love with Seattle to a great extent. And you've lived much of the last... since then here.
Yeah, for 6.5 years, there's been 2 long forays into New York. I went back to do this off-Broadway show, Mimi LeDuc, with Eartha Kitt, late Eartha Kitt and the late Tom Aldridge, and Annie Golden, and a lot of folks. And that was about a 4-month off-Broadway gig, and then I was there for 9 months, from 2010 to 11, doing Memphis and Driving Miss Daisy, the one with James Earl Jones and Vanessa Redgrave.
So I think it's been amazing that you're one of these Seattle actors who has this amazing career here in Seattle. You keep your hand in New York. You're frequently going back there. And you really established yourself in both worlds.
It seems to be really working. It's harder to get work in New York when you live on the wrong coast. But those occasions will happen once in a while, and for me, I'd be happy just to work here 12 months of the year.
We're working on that.
That's great. Yeah, that's good. It's all good.
So prior to Seattle, you were in New York for many years. How many years?
I lived in Philadelphia for a little while, but I came to New York on January 1st, 1977.
Wow.
So to 2005, when I came here to do Sweeney Todd, that's 28 years.
Wow. And how many Broadway shows during that time?
It depends on how you count it, because a couple of shows sometimes can fall into a little murky category where you can almost call them Broadway, but they weren't Tony eligible.
Right.
But I think officially, Driving Miss Daisy was number 9. So that's 9 shows.
And one of those Broadway shows was Damn Yankees, the revival of Damn Yankees.
Yeah, the revival that Jack O'Brien did, I guess, was the Marriott Marquis. It started out, that show fell into 2 segments. There was the Victor Garber starring section, and then when he left, they brought in Jerry Lewis to take over as the Devil Applegate, and I joined the show a little after he did. I've actually went to IBDB, which is the Broadway database, and it says that that show was Jerry Lewis's first Broadway production, which I sort of forgot. I remember, didn't he do Hell's a Poppin'?
But it never came in, I think. Okay. I think it closed out of town. Yeah,
right.
He did a show called, Jerry Lewis did a musical called Hell's a Poppin', but it failed on the road. So
yeah, okay.
I think it was his Broadway
That would have
debut.
been his first, but it was
right, because he was, in his...
Which was amazing.
Pushing 70 probably at that point, wasn't he? Yeah.
I think it was in his late 60s. He just had a new child by his wife, so he was a new proud father. He was thrilled to be on Broadway and have that, I guess it had been a kind of a life's goal all his life to be able to be on Broadway.
Yeah.
He did a great job. Obviously,
the audience played the same part that you're playing today.
I played a number of roles in this, but I certainly played the coach for a while. Dick Latessa was playing the coach, and whenever he would leave, I would take over for him. I also played Mr. Welch, the owner of the team, and
the commissioner of baseball, probably.
No, I didn't play the commissioner. I also played Joe Boyd, the older Joe, who turns into Joe Hardy. And my regular role was a role that doesn't appear in this production. His name was Delbert Stubbs, who was the catcher for the team. In this production, Gabe Corey plays it, and his name is Linville.
They did a revised version in that, but we've gone back to the original version.
Right.
And do you see big differences between? Does it feel different, or is it?
No. I mean, there are two things that I remember. Three things actually that we did in that production, which just made it longer. And there was a whole sequence where there was a lot of ball throwing and catching and fielding.
There was the blooper ballet.
The blooper ballet.
Yeah, Rob Marshall.
And there was this enormous section as Joe becomes more famous. Right. Where I actually played like an advertising guy. You know, there were commercials, and the girls came out, and they were playing like he was in commercials. There were big ads.
They put him on the Wheaties box, I believe. Yeah.
So there was a big section of his growing public awareness of who he was as he became a hero. And then at the end, the other third thing was our curtain call. Was like 15 minutes long. It was called a mega mix, I guess that was just starting to be instituted in 94, 95. It was ended up being sort of the biggest number of the show as successive groups of people came in, and there was dancing, and it was like the audience was like blown away. They thought the show was over, and then we brought in Jerry Lewis at the end, and the audience went crazy. Those people came. Jerry did a great job in that show. People really came to see him, so it was sort of more like they wanted to see the Jerry Lewis show than a production of Damn Yankees. Yeah. He could do no wrong. They just wanted to see him do his shtick, and every night when he would go, "Lady!" they would go wild. They loved that. Yeah.
So I also want to make sure we talk about Titanic while we're here. So you're playing the captain.
Yeah, this is a very interesting experience. We haven't quite started Titanic rehearsals yet, which start on Friday for most of us. So Titanic sort of sits in the middle of the Damn Yankees rehearsal process, as you know. But we got all the materials from Ian Eisendrath, your fantastic music director, several weeks ago. So we've all been independently learning our stuff. I know all the captain's material, so when we meet up on Friday, it should be an easy go. Also, as the captain, I do more talking than singing, which makes it easy. Well, I got to tell you, I know you have other questions to ask, but
no, go ahead.
A lot of the process when I do a show is the kind of the research on it, almost as much as the rehearsal, if not more. So the fact that I have to do Titanic, and of course, most people are aware that we're coming up to the 100th anniversary of the sinking. But there's been so much on TV, and so I've been doing a lot of reading and research on it just because it fascinates me. There's not that much we can do.
Every night there's like another documentary on some station.
All sorts of things. They're coming out with this mini-series that Julian Fellows, who did Downton Abbey, has written, and the re-release of the 3D Titanic is out, and I think I'm trying to rent A Night to Remember, which is that first black and white.
That's the one I remember as a kid watching that movie all the time on TV, and afternoon movies kind of thing.
But it's really good, so I know so much about the actual event, and the more I know about it, I think the more resonance it will have. It should be a very moving thing, as you've said, that that this happens on the exact centennial of the death of these people who certainly didn't expect to die at that point.
Exactly. Well, I think it's really topical in some ways too, because with this recent cruise ship disaster and the captain's part in that,
I know,
is really made me think. And there's a song in the show, you don't get to sing it, but the Murdoch sings a little piece about what the captain's job on the ship is.
Right.
I mean, you're in that scene with him,
right.
And it really had a lot of resonance for me when I heard it. I was like, wow, that captain who, is responsible for the lives of all these people.
It's true. That Italian whole situation was just crazy. That ship was twice the length of the original Titanic.
You're kidding.
It is twice as big, and so when it fell over on that shoal off the coast of Italy, it's amazing that only 18 or 19 people died. Right. But that guy was... They should write a show about that guy. I mean, he was a big womanizer, I think. He was, they passed by the ship just because his chef wanted to, wave to his friends. Just insane. Yeah. My character, Captain Smith, was much more responsible. And, he first of all, he didn't leave the ship as this Italian guy did. He stayed and,
went down with the ship. Yeah.
There's one thing, though, that, the Captain Smith in our show, they say he... I say that it's like this was going to be my last voyage entirely, which may be slightly inaccurate. I think what they actually asked him to do was he agreed to do the maiden voyage of the Titanic, and then he would do a few more voyages and sort of segue into retirement. He was, I think, 60.
But still, he was intending just to be.
It certainly was near
on
the
his
end.
way out. And like,
Yeah, I don't think it was like he was going
Yeah.
to snuff it in this last thing.
And I read that he had never had he'd never even seen a sea disaster, been anywhere near it. He'd had sort of like a perfect, clean record. It was like completely out of
Pretty
his world.
pristine, yeah. He was a good guy. I'm sure he had some great plans for retirement that never materialized.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Alan, for being here. I know you have to send you back to rehearsal, to Damn Yankees rehearsal today and Titanic rehearsal starting in a few days. And then Titanic is all coming together very quickly. We do the whole thing in 10 days, rehearsals and performances.
Yeah, but we're all really well prepared, and you have all these extraordinary voices. I mean,
The cast is unbelievable.
100 and what do you have, like 110 singers alone?
Yeah, there's 140 people on stage, including the orchestra, the choir from Pacific Lutheran University, and then this amazing cast of really some of the greatest talent, Broadway, Seattle, combined to make the show happen.
I can't wait to get on that stage with all those folk and the full orchestra. It's going to be the most amazing experience for me personally, let alone for what the audience takes away from it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.